existed. It wasn't a court filing splashed across headlines. It wasn't a press release from a publicist. It was something far more ordinary, a voter registration form, in filed by a college freshman during her very first election as an adult. And but ordinary things have a strange way of hiding the biggest secrets. Shinde. Because when someone finally opened that file, the name written on it didn't match the name the entire world has known since 2006. Not Suri Cruise. Just Suri Noelle. No Cruise anywhere on the page. Not as a middle name, not as an afterthought, not anywhere at all. You know? And in Pennsylvania, that's not something you can explain away as a typo. State law requires your exact legal name on that document, which means somewhere between childhood and college, one of Hollywood's most famous daughters, quietly, legally, and permanently walked away from her father's last name, and almost nobody noticed. Until now. Xing. This is the story of how that happened, what came before it, and why the timing behind it might be the most revealing part of all. Page 6 was the outlet that first pieced this together. Once they confirmed the detail directly with Pennsylvania's own court system, the story moved fast. Within hours, TMZ had picked it up and confirmed it independently. Then people followed. Then nearly every major entertainment outlet in the country was reporting the exact same conclusion. And all tracing back to the same paper trail sitting quietly in a county office. Lend. The registration itself was dated back to October of 2024. That was during Suri's freshman year at Carnegie Mellon University, in Allegheny County. She had just turned 18, old enough to vote for the very first time in her life, and when she filled out that form, she used the name Suri Noelle. Banda, Pennsylvania court officials were direct about one specific point when Page 6 reached out for confirmation. Residents cannot register under a nickname, a stage name, or a preferred alias. Whatever appears on that registration form has to match exactly what's already on file with the state as a person's legal name. Bland. Which ruled out the simplest, most comfortable explanation right away. This wasn't Suri casually going by something different for one form. This was already her official legal identity, changed months, possibly even years, before anyone in the press ever caught wind of it. Band, reps for Tom Cruise did not respond to requests for comment. Reps for Katie Holmes stayed silent too, which left the public standing in front of a confirmed paper trail, with zero explanation coming directly from the people, actually at the center of it. Janda. So the question became unavoidable almost instantly. If this had technically been sitting inside public records since 2024, why did it take nearly 2 full years, all the way into the summer of 2026, for anyone outside that county office to actually find it? And more importantly than that, what actually led to it in the first place? To understand what this name change really represents, you have to go back to where this entire family started, because the beginning of this story looks almost nothing like where it eventually ended up. Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes began their relationship in early 2005. Within a year, they welcomed a daughter, born in April of 2006. 7 months after that, they got married. For a moment, it looked like one of those fast-moving Hollywood romances that somehow manages to work out anyway, against all odds. It didn't. By 2012, after roughly 6 years of marriage, Holmes filed for divorce. And when the custody arrangement was finalized, Suri stayed primarily with her mother. Ipgunsor. Bond. That single decision shaped almost everything that came after it. From that point forward, 2 very different childhoods started running side by side, in completely separate worlds. One life played out under studio lights, in front of cameras, across the biggest stages the industry had to offer. The other played out mostly in New York, largely outside the public eye, built around a single parent, handling the raising almost entirely on her own. Holmes has spoken about that era in interviews over the years, describing herself and Suri as two people who, in her own words, kind of grew up together. That's not the description of a household with two present, equally involved parents. It sounds more like two people learning life at the same pace, side by side, while one name from that original family slowly began fading into the background of everyday routine. That fading didn't happen overnight. It happened gradually, the way most real estrangements actually do without a single dramatic headline, marking the exact moment it started, and that fading is exactly where the real story truly begins. Because somewhere inside that early gap, something shifted permanently. Multiple reports over the years have landed on roughly the same window. Suri was around 6 or 7 years old, as the point where meaningful, regular contact with her father effectively stopped altogether. Mongs. There was no single dramatic incident ever confirmed publicly by either side. No headline-making blow-up, no explosive interview moment pinpointing an exact date. Just distance. The kind that builds so gradually, so quietly, that you don't fully register how far it's gone until years later, when a stranger opens a routine voter file and suddenly realizes just how complete that distance actually became. Tom Cruise, for his part, has remained one of the most visible and committed members of the Church of Scientology for decades now. That fact has been part of the ongoing public conversation around this family for years, and it's been widely reported as one of several considerations. Dort. Holmes weighed while deciding how to raise Suri outside of it. Benji. But here's exactly where it's important to slow down and be careful. Nobody involved in this story, not Tom, not Katie, and certainly not Suri herself, has ever gone on the record with one single, confirmed reason. What's actually documented, consistently, across every credible report, is simply the distance itself. The specific explanation behind that distance remains speculation, repeated so often across entertainment media over the years that it can start to feel like settled fact,
chic in her
even
stylish
though
winter
technically
ensemble
it
while
still
enjoying the
isn't.
stroll with
Gender so
Emilio
for well over
Vitolo
a
Jr.
decade, that's simply
Katie
where things
Holmes
sat,
never fails to
frozen in
disappoint
place.
her fans
A
as
father
far as her
building an
style.
enormous, highly visible public career. A daughter growing steadily into her own separate life, almost entirely without him present in it. Then this past January, something completely unexpected started circulating in the press. Insiders began telling entertainment outlets that Tom Cruise was preparing to make what one report specifically called his next big focus, rebuilding some kind of relationship with Suri. According to those, this shift reportedly came shortly after his split from actress Ana de Armas. In October of 2025, following night, men's friends close to Cruise described the estrangement with his daughter as something that had weighed on him more heavily over the years than any failed relationship in his personal life ever had. One source went even further, saying he was approaching the entire situation with real caution, careful not to cause Suri any discomfort or apply unwanted pressure, and reportedly prepared to step back completely if she simply wasn't ready. Buried inside that same wave of coverage was another detail that caught people's attention almost immediately. Despite years of near-total silence between them, Cruise had reportedly continued funding Suri's college education throughout, in line with the terms originally laid out in the 2012 divorce agreement. Put together, all of it painted a fairly specific picture. A father quietly fulfilling financial obligations year after year, even without any real relationship to show for it, now reportedly hoping that 2026 might finally become the moment. Everything started to change between them Fanja for a story that had sat completely frozen for over a decade. That reporting represented a real shift in tone. It suggested momentum building. It suggested genuine effort behind the scenes. It suggested that maybe, after all this time apart, something was finally about to move forward in a meaningful way. Beans. Which makes what happened only a few months later land so differently than anyone following along would have expected. Beamed. Because just months after those reconciliation reports first surfaced, the headlines flipped completely in the opposite direction. Mans. Instead of a story about reaching out, the public suddenly got a story about stepping away for good. Instead of he wants back in, it became she'd already left, quietly. A while ago, the name change reporting broke in late July of 2026. And almost overnight, the entire narrative surrounding this family reversed itself entirely. Dend. It's worth sitting with that timeline for just a second. Insiders describing a father gearing up cautiously and deliberately to finally reconnect after more than a decade apart. And around that very same stretch of time, his own daughter, already carrying a legal name that no longer included him at all, filed away quietly in a county office. Two completely different stories, same family. Pointing in absolutely opposite directions, maybe they're entirely unconnected. Maybe the January reports were simply optimistic guesses from sources who genuinely wanted to believe reconciliation was coming, and nothing behind the scenes ever actually materialized the way it was described. Or maybe this is exactly what an answer looks like when it's already been given, quietly, through action instead of a public statement. Mommed. Because a legal name change isn't something that happens on a passing whim. Late one night, out of frustration. It requires actual paperwork. It requires court involvement, deliberate follow-through, real time and effort to carry out completely. It's not a fleeting mood. It's a decision that demands sustained intention behind it. Bonjet. Which raises one uncomfortable possibility worth sitting with. What if the reconciliation reports weren't wrong at all about Tom's genuine intentions but simply arrived too late to change something that had already, quietly, been set firmly in motion long before? There's another layer to this story that's easy to overlook entirely. Back in December of 2024, a separate rumor had already started circulating widely, the claim that Suri had inherited a trust fund connected directly to her father. Katie Holmes denied that claim publicly and directly, shutting it down herself. It turned out to be false, or at the very least, unconfirmed enough that her own mother felt compelled to step in and correct the record for everyone. Belines. That detail matters more than it might seem at first, because it shows this wasn't actually the first time public assumptions about this particular family had outpaced their effects on the Mayans. There's also the detail of the name itself, worth pausing on. Noelle isn't some completely outside choice, pulled from nowhere. It's Suri's own middle name, which suggests this decision wasn't really about creating distance from her identity altogether. Only from one very specific part of it that clearly no longer felt like hers to carry. And then there's a filing detail that's easy to miss on a first read. Suri reportedly never filed the actual name change within the Pennsylvania county where she currently lives, which strongly suggests she likely made that change somewhere else entirely, possibly well before she ever moved there for college in the first place. Online. Reactions split almost immediately once the story broke. Some viewers expressed quiet sympathy, calling it a long time coming. After everything reported over the years, others pushed back hard, arguing that a name change alone doesn't automatically mean total rejection of a parent. Reports claimed both interpretations spread heavily within hours, though neither side has ever been confirmed directly by Suri. Which leaves one final question still hanging in the air. unanswered by anyone directly involved. Mund. What does a legal name change actually mean, in strict practical terms, versus what people instinctively assume it means, on a deeper, emotional level? Legally, the answer is fairly straightforward. It's a court process, a records update, a new identity, now reflected permanently on paper. Nothing especially complicated about it on a purely technical level. Once you strip away everything else surrounding it. Emotionally, though, it's almost never that simple, and everyone following this story clearly senses that. Some people change their name specifically to step outside a famous surname, and just be treated like anyone else walking across a college campus, and treat. Some do it to feel closer to the parent who was actually present, freight, day after day, for nearly 20 consistent years. Some do it simply because a name never truly felt like their own to begin with, regardless of who originally gave it to them at birth. Any one of those explanations could genuinely apply here, and there's no way to know for certain which one actually does. Without a direct, personal statement from Suri herself, the public is left choosing between two very different stories, built entirely from the exact same limited set of facts currently available. One version suggests a quiet, final decision. The last remaining piece of a relationship that effectively ended a long time ago, only now, made fully official for the world to eventually notice. The other version suggests something much simpler, just a young woman shaping her own adult identity, with her father's long absence being incidental rather than the entire point behind the decision itself. Both versions fit the available evidence equally well. Only one of them is actually true. And right now, in July of 2026, that answer still belongs to exactly one person. Strip away every headline, and what's actually left here is something far quieter than a scandal. A father who spent over a decade living in the spotlight, while his daughter quietly built an entire life, almost entirely without him present in it. A daughter who, at some specific point along the way, made a decision that took real, sustained effort to carry out, not necessarily out of anger, but maybe simply out of clarity about who actually raised her. Two completely opposite stories broke within just months of each other this year. One claimed reconciliation might finally be coming after over a decade apart. So, the other suggested that door may have already quietly closed, before anyone outside the family even noticed. Maybe both were true at different moments in time. Maybe, in the end, neither one really was. What's certain, confirmed, and sitting in official public records is simply this: the paperwork exists. The reasoning behind it doesn't. Not publicly, not yet, and maybe not ever. If you had to bet on which version is actually closer to the truth here, I'd genuinely like to hear your honest take down in the comments below. And if these are the kinds of stories you want more of on this channel, the quiet one sitting inside public records instead of press conferences, go ahead and hit subscribe before you go.